Will you pray with me? May the words of my mouth and the meditation of each of our hearts be acceptable to you this day, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. So I'm guessing that many of you have arrived this morning with bellies still full from your Thanksgiving dinners and with warm memories still in your hearts of family gatherings. And that at the end of yet another divisive election season with multiple mass shootings this week alone, that you're ready for the start of Advent, for that sparkly, serene season of expectation. But then the Revised Common Lectionary gives us the texts that Russ just shared, full of talk of warfare and apocalyptic visions. And maybe you're feeling startled and disappointed because this is not the Advent to which we were looking forward. But despite all of this talk of things of war, Isaiah casts a prophetic vision of a world bending around the mountain of God, full of abundant grace, of turning tools of war into implements of peace that enable us to feed others. While there will be weapons, there will no longer be use for them because there will be no need for violence. But the prophet does make clear that God will call out injustice for what it is when he says the God will judge between the nations. God will repair what we have done wrong and set the world right, because God does not accept the world as we have inherited it and misshapen it. Isaiah's prophecy reminds us that we don't have to accept the brokenness of our world as inevitable. We don't need to accept that angry employees can buy a gun in the morning and later that same day use it to kill their colleagues. We don't need to accept that someone can refuse to acknowledge the results of a fair election in this country and refuse to concede. We don't need to accept that one nation can invade another and harm its most vulnerable people by cutting off power and food supplies. And we absolutely don't need to accept discourses that dehumanize victim and oppressor alike. Because prophets like Isaiah dream dreams that help us see beyond the everyday vision to imagine God's realm, even when we are not able to fathom it. Isaiah envisions turning tanks and nuclear arsenals into tractors to plow fields, turning guns into fences on which grapevines can grow, and into rakes and spades and shovels. He envisions turning missile silos into silos to hold wheat and corn, and making the Pentagon into the world's largest food court. Many find this vision naive. Many more will hear it as a call to build higher walls and to accumulate more weapons, because they think that prophets belong to a dusty past, long ago gone. But in reality, Isaiah and others cast visions that challenge us to see beyond what we can see is right in front of us. Rather than anesthetize us, they rouse us from our stupor, seeking to energize us with hope as they speak truth to power, and they inspire us to do the same. A couple of weeks ago, I was in New Orleans for an Odessa conference, and I was inspired by the chance to see a modern-day prophet at work, because there I met Norris Henderson, the founder of Voice of the Experienced, or the acronym VOTE for short. Henderson was wrongly incarcerated and sentenced to life in prison, but was finally released in 2004 after serving 27 years, when they finally had evidence that much of which he dug up himself to realize that he was wrongly convicted. And a year after leaving prison, he formed this organization to fight for voting rights, for medical coverage, fair housing, and jobs for formerly incarcerated Louisianans. He did not let that life in prison make him bitter, and instead relies on his faith to keep going and keep making a difference, changing laws that allow those who have been previously jailed to vote, to serve on juries, to find jobs, and to locate decent housing. Vote owns its own building and its own transitional housing next door, where because they are able to see possibilities where others simply see limitations. And so, my friends, on this first Sunday of Advent, as we begin the season of waiting, expectation, and patience, rather than waiting passively, looking only at the surface, may we instead be inspired by Isaiah and modern-day prophets like Norris, so that we can create tools for change, that we can dig deep and find something that we might not have otherwise imagined. Can we find hope as we await the coming of the Christ child by refusing to participate in the negativity of our culture? Last week at our Vision Summit, we talked about kindness. And so this morning, I challenge you and ask that you commit to making acts of kindness to one another and to all those that you encounter in this season. And then pray that we will be able to continue that into the new year and beyond. You know, this Advent, I am filled with hope that God is still at work in the world, urging us to accept things as they are, to not accept things, as they are, to turn tools of war into tools of opportunity, to seek to offer kindness to strangers, and to find our way to live in the world that God has created. So let's enter into the season of anticipation, expecting the best from one another and for one another. May it be so. Amen.